All right. All right, welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Alan Ulrich, here with my partner, Bob Rose. How you doing tonight, Bob?
Oh, I'm doing all right, Alan. Trying to stay warm up north here. Hope you and your family are doing well, though.
You know what? It is like 60. Oh, it's 55 degrees now. But it's kind of it's a Pacific front that's come through, so it's kind of damp cold. It's not really
Mhm.
cold. It's like a damp cool. So a little humidity to it. It's a little bit different than what you're dealing with probably up there. What's the weather like up there right now?
We got a damp cold too. Like the temperature wise, it's not bad. I think it's in the low 30s tonight. But we were dealing with a little bit of freezing rain coming back from dinner. Because we must have that Pacific front too, where it doesn't feel that cold when you first step outside, but you're
Mhm.
outside for a few minutes and it gets down through however many layers you're wearing.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny because they talk about the different kind of colds. I've been in the dry cold, and the dry cold is very different.
Hmm.
It you feel it on your skin. Your hands get dry. Your cheeks kind of red and everything else like that. But it doesn't go through your clothing unless the wind's
Yeah.
blowing. It doesn't go through your clothing. But when you get those damp colds like we get down here, oh my God! It just like you said, it feels like no matter what you have on, this your core is freezing. So
Hmm.
and I don't get cold. I generally don't get cold, but I much rather that dry cold. I sat through a Cajuns football game one time in that kind of weather, and I was like, "Oh my God, I'm out of here, man!
Yeah.
I'm out of here. I can't do this." I had a big old heavy coat on. I'm like, "I'm out. I can't do this shit." Um, before we dissect the Lions game, which I think everyone has over the past 48 hours, did you watch college football this weekend?
Yeah. I was. Last 2 weekends, I've been tuning into a lot of the big games, and
Mhm.
I love chaos.
Yeah.
If a team that I don't have if I don't have any rooting interest in a specific team, then I just root for chaos. Like I was upset that Alabama somehow knocked off Auburn. I was upset that that Washington beat Oregon. That kind of thing. To me, I get the rage over the Florida State snub. If you beat every single team that's put in front of you and you're in a so-called Power Five conference, you deserve a spot in the playoffs. But who are you going to leave out? I mean, it's bad enough you had to leave Georgia out despite only one loss.
Mhm.
I've been advocating for years now, that if you're going to have a playoff system, have 6 teams. With your top 2 getting a bye, and that actually would have worked out perfectly this year. I know they're going to a 12-team playoff this next year. Don't think for 1 second that that's going to alleviate any of the BS politics that go on behind the scenes. And in my opinion, a 12-team playoff, it might as well be renamed the SEC Big Ten Invitational, because at least 8 of the 12 teams are going to be from those 2 conferences.
Well, it's funny because that is pretty much what why people were so upset that Alabama got in
Yeah,
was because they thought for the first time we're gonna keep an SEC team out, and we're gonna be able.
never.
Yeah, I know. We were gonna have a national champion who is not a member of the SEC. I saw the oh, you bastard! You didn't do all my shows. I lined all this stuff up, and you went and cut them off. Um, I saw the Michigan people looking at the selection committee when they saw Alabama got in there, you could see all the heads drop because it's like,
Yep.
shit, we got to play these guys. And yeah, it was entertaining to me. I enjoy the chaos too. I would have liked to have seen it be 6 teams this year because I get it. Florida State deserves to be in there. Florida
Mhm.
State, I think if their starting quarterback stayed and they probably beat Louisville a little more soundly, they probably see. Here's the issue: you couldn't have Alabama in and keep Texas out because Texas beat Alabama.
Mhm.
Couldn't kick Alabama out because Alabama beat the only undefeated former national champion in the championship SEC championship.
Yep.
So someone had to go, and it couldn't be
Yeah.
Washington or Michigan. So it's like this is the year you could have had 6 because you
Yeah.
could have put in Georgia and Florida State, and it would have worked because a lot of people would have paid a lot of money to see a rematch of Florida and Georgia State,
Oh.
not Florida, Georgia and Alabama. They
Oh yeah.
would love to see that rematch. So I get it. And the hard part about it is, you now have Florida State playing. Who are they playing? Florida State's playing not Ohio
I think
State.
it's either
Are they
Ohio
playing?
State or Georgia.
Yeah,
One of the two. It basically would have been the play-in game if they would have been 6 teams.
right. Okay. All right. Yeah. So know those kind of matchups now. I mean, it really, you have some really good bowl, a lot of great matchups that you want to see.
Mhm.
Because I think Ohio State is playing somebody really big too. So it's a lot of these teams that were really close to being in the playoffs. Um, so I mean, I enjoyed watching Alabama upset Georgia because I didn't expect Alabama to win that game at all. I really didn't. Um, Yeah, you're right, Anna. That's exactly what I'm saying because Jordan Davis was out. It wasn't going to be a good game. They thought that they would have got a better game on Alabama and Texas. And personally, I think Alabama and Texas are going to end up playing for the national championship because I think
Yeah.
Alabama can beat Michigan, and I
Oh
think
yeah.
Texas can beat Washington. So you do get a championship level game against one another. Um, that was the good football this weekend. Now let's talk
Right.
about the Saints Lions. um, they spent a lot of time working on red zone offense, and it showed this weekend. They
Mhm.
went 4 for 4 in the red zone. You really did see improvement by the Saints offense across the board. But they find this is what bad teams do. They find a way to beat themselves.
Mhm.
And 2 turnovers, you're down 21-0 in the first quarter. What was probably, I guess, the most upsetting or surprising thing that got you in this game?
The most upsetting / surprising thing to me, was on the defensive side again. That this defense just they didn't show up, and I mean, not only Detroit got that gimme touchdown off of the Jawan Johnson interception. I don't even
Mhm.
Derek Carr gets credit for it, but that's all on Jawan. They had an easy score that way, but the other 2 Detroit drives, they were long drives where they just stuffed the ball down the Saints' throat,
Mhm.
and the Saints wouldn't, and didn't stop it. Didn't even come close. And that was the most infuriating thing to me. And I know, and I said this on Jordy's show earlier, I know that the Saints showed a lot of character in mounting the comeback like they did, but I also felt like Detroit, and remember, Detroit's a young team. They're still learning how to win. I felt like Detroit took their foot off the gas a little bit, at least emotionally, and let the Saints off the hook, let the Saints back in the game. Now, that's neither here nor there. The Saints mounted a comeback that fell short. But when Detroit realized, oh my God, we're in for a fight after all, then they kind of hitched back up their belt buckle and went back to work and did what they had to late in the game. So equally infuriating was, to running the ball down the Saints' throat to start the game, was that Detroit's offense was easily able to make the plays that kept drives alive, that kept eating up the clock against this supposedly formidable New Orleans defense that we've been hearing so much about this offseason. So, while the offense, they had some things that made me angry. Coaches obviously did some things that made me angry. It was the Saints defense for the 7th week in a row that I think deserves the biggest goat horn of the game.
I'm glad you phrased it that way too, because what was frustrating to me, of course, was that the Saints defense was so bad. And I get it. You turn the ball over inside your own 25-yard line twice. They're coming away with at least a field goal.
Yeah.
But it was a long drives. It was the drives that it felt like they couldn't get off the field. They couldn't get to Goff. They got to him one time, but for the most part, they couldn't get to Goff. So he had ample time to sit there and pick the Saints apart. You eliminated their top receiving weapons, but you also allowed Sam Laporta, who I loved coming out of the draft.
Oh yeah, me too.
Just to eat you alive. And it's like, who he's going to. Why aren't you doubling him? And Carr getting hurt at the end of the game, kind of much like the Green Bay game, it felt like you got a touchdown on a fluke play that got you down there, that you really had no business throwing that ball the way he did. But you got the touchdown. You got it within a score. All you have to do is stop them one more time, and you can get it. And the defense failed to stop them, to give the offense one more opportunity. I mean, that's why I think Dennis Allen goes for it on 4th down about midfield, because he really didn't have the confidence in his defense to stop these guys. And that was very, very telling, and probably the most shocking thing about that loss is that Dennis Allen started to recognize that, my defense is not very good. I'm going to have to start doing things, going for it on 4th down now, because I don't think my defense can hold up their end of the bargain. What is the biggest problem with the defense?
Wow. I don't know. Other than the two obvious factors, schematic factors, are being helpless against mobile quarterbacks and not making adjustments to athletic tight ends. I mean, Cole Kmet, TJ Hawkinson, and Sam Laporta just ripped them apart. And watching them against you were screaming about Hawkinson not making any coverage adjustments. I was screaming about Laporta not making any coverage adjustments. So I mean, that part schematically is on the coaching staff, but as a unit, New Orleans just they're not getting any pressure on the passer at all. Anymore. I think that this defense just got old. They got old. I know everybody likes to blame everything on the coaches and everything on Dennis Allen, and I get it. And they do deserve a lot of the blame. But Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, they fell off a cliff. And I think that in doing so, they have uncovered the serious deficiencies in Pete Werner's game, the serious deficiencies on the back end, with Tyrann Mathieu, who's gotten old quick, Marcus May, who takes piss poor angles, in the open field, and then, and Matt, I think it was you, Matt, that just said it, the front six is slow. That goes back to what I said about Werner. We know that Zach Bond's a downhill defender. When they used him as that on Sunday, he overcame, a rocky start. But outside of Granderson and Brissy, you really don't have any superior athletes in that front seven anymore. And it's showing because they can't make the plays sideline to sideline. They're getting beat on the corners. They're getting beat on the edges. And the defensive tackles are starting to get pushed off of the ball again really easy. I've noticed in the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Well, and it shows up on film. That's why you see teams doing the same things
Mm-hmm.
over and over and over again. And Allen knows it. He's trying to protect them as best he can, but you're running out of bodies. Okay, so this past week, Marcus May was out. Marshawn Lattimore is out. Um, uh, Pete Werner was out. Cam Jordan barely played because of a bad ankle. Foskey was in and out. So you're relying on passing. You're relying on a lot of guys who really can't take a lot of snaps. And the disappointing thing is that some of the guys that you brought in to try and shore up some of this stuff, and Kalen Saunders is the one I'm thinking of right now, just are not producing, producing at all. Nefe, is that how you say his name? Nefe? Sewell. Maybe because he was playing his brother, had a good game. He really did. For his limited athletic skills, he had a good game. But this is what I was talking about, what I've been talking about on Saints Twitter, and I've been talking about on Saints social media. You're running out of bodies, and the lack of draft depth is showing up now on his team. The guys that would have come in to start taking the place of these older players, you're rotating them in. Just they're not there. I mean, Peyton Turner, you got nothing out of him. He's always injured. We already know that Marcus Davenport's gone, but you really couldn't get anything consistent out of him. And the hot, and we're going to talk more about this as the season ends and stuff, but the hot name all the Saints fans seem to want is we need to replace the quarterback. We need to get Jalen Daniels on this team. We need to get Jalen Daniels. Guys, that's not going to fix this defense. You're going to be running this same old defense that's going to be a year older and a year slower. So you're going to be relying on Jalen Daniels if, let's just say you're going to bench Carr or you do whatever with Carr, because they're going to want Jalen Daniels in there from game one. But, you saw what happened at LSU, and that's playing against the Georgia States and the Navies and, those teams, because when he played against, he scored touchdowns against Alabama and stuff, but when he had to play against, SEC teams, he had to play like Superman football every week just to keep LSU in a game. And if he was lucky, they won. But against some of these teams like Alabama and Ole Miss and Florida State, they lost because he couldn't be Superman the whole game. You need a lot on this team. And if you have a top 10 pick at the end of this season, it makes far more sense to trade back for more picks. You only have 2 picks in the top 100. Right now, you have some compensatory picks you may get. But right now, you need a youth movement. And that's how you get out of salary cap trouble. And you really need a lot of defensive players right now. You need defensive tackles to go along with the young players, as you mentioned. You need linebackers,
Hmm.
and you need safety help. You've got some pieces in that defense, but you need to get younger and better. Otherwise, teams are going to be doing this to you week after week after week because they're seeing this on film. They're seeing Demario Davis has lost a step on his sideline speed. He can go up the middle and make a play, but sideline to sideline, if you can get him matched up one on one with a linebacker, one on one with a tight end, he's losing.
Yep.
And the Saints just can't generate the pass rush, and they're afraid to blitz because it's going to leave right behind the linebackers open. So that's why I'm glad you brought that up, because I didn't even want to get into the offense yet. But that's if anything's going to doom, to me, anything's going to doom Dennis Allen, it's the defense falling off the way it did.
As it should, because I mean, yeah, he's the defensive coach. That was the thing that this team could hang their hat on, supposedly. And it's not just this season. You look back to last season; they almost lost a shootout against Seattle because of late defensive failures. They did lose, late to Minnesota, to Tampa Bay, to the second Tampa Bay game, to Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And I'm missing one here, but they lost 4 games last year because of fourth quarter failings by the defense. And you mentioned
Minnesota.
Green Bay this year. Minnesota, Chicago. You almost lost to Chicago because of late failings. So if your defensive coach can't coach up the defense, whether it's lack of personnel, lack of skill, whatever the reason is, if the defense is poor with a defensive coach, then there's literally zero reason. He has zero usefulness to this franchise now.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And to me, some of the coaches he has brought in have made the defense worse too.
Yes.
I'm talking about Joe Woods, defensive coordinator,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm talking about Grantham, I think is how you say his name, defensive line coach.
Yep. Todd Grantham.
Yeah, I those two guys, I think, I like the secondary coach. I think the secondary is playing much, much better. They're much better organized than they were last year. But I think that this offensive coach, this defensive line coach and defensive coordinator, Joe Woods, had this reputation in Cincinnati. Cleveland. In Cleveland, when he was defensive coordinator there, that he would allow teams to come back, and he would kind of call the dogs off a little bit, make the game a hell of a lot closer.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's what's happening in this game with this team, but that inability to close the door on teams is showing up more and more each week. And it's a problem. And Dennis Allen brought these guys in. This is not, I got Sean Payton's coordinator. Chris Richard, who is unemployed still, Chris Richard and Allen had a disagreement on philosophy. I don't know what that disagreement was, but Chris Richard is looking like he was right about something. Whatever this disagreement was, he seems to be right about it. And Ryan Nielsen missing may be part of the problem too. I'm doing better, but
it made me absolutely sick to lose Ryan Nielsen. Now, I figured, even though we didn't hear anything, I figured that it was a similar schematic disagreement between Nielsen and Allen as it was, the more publicized disagreement between Richard and Allen. Nielsen basically left for a promotion, because titled as defensive coordinator or co-defensive coordinator in New Orleans, you knew that Dennis Allen was calling the shots. The Atlanta Falcons defense is all Ryan Nielsen right now. But still, nevertheless, it still made me sick to lose him. And as you pointed out, he was the defensive line specialist. And this defensive line, even with the deficiencies at defensive tackle last year, this team still had 48 sacks, 4th most in the NFL. As we sit here today, going into week 13, they have 18 sacks and have had one sack in the last 3 games. That's the second fewest sacks in the NFL behind the Chicago Bears at 17.
Yeah. I mean, and I get it. Defensive line is more than sacks, it's
Yeah,
pressures too, but you're not even getting that. You're having a hard time dealing with running quarterbacks because guys aren't staying in their lanes. You're having a hard time getting off your blocks and getting to the quarterback. You're not even batting a lot of passes down um, or creating just havoc. And you have a young defensive lineman in there in Brian Brzee, who is probably going to turn out to be an all pro when he grows up. He's kind of hit that rookie wall right
yeah,
now. Um, it's coming. He'll break through, but it's he is getting a lot more snaps, but you're not seeing. Excuse me, you're not seeing further development out of him right now. So this is when the other guy should be stepping up, and there isn't
mhm,
anybody who's stepping up, and it's very frustrating because the limitations that are showing. I mean, I'll be honest with you. The guy I like most in the first round, if I'm picking, is that kid out of Florida State. That was a one man
yeah,
wrecking crew against. I granted it's Louisville, but still, he like a one man wrecking crew out there.
yep.
Uh, and I would love to have him in the first round over a quarterback right now. Um,
Hey, let
hell,
me ask you this, and we're going to have plenty of the off season to talk about this leading up to the draft. But you have very vocally pointed out the other major team needs. So let's ignore quarterback for a second. They're going to need at least one offensive tackle.
mhm,
I think tight end is a major need going into the off season, and then on defense, despite the fact you used a second round pick on Foskey, and the jury's still out on him. Don't rule him a bust yet. But you used a second round pick on Foskey, first rounders on Davenport and Turner that flamed out. And here you are, you still need a pass rusher on the edge. Defensive tackle, still a need. Linebacker, a major need. Safety, a major need.
mhm,
And only 2 draft
mhm,
picks in the first 2 rounds to do it. Because even compensatory picks, they're not going to be any earlier than late third round.
mhm,
You have you have 3 cornerbacks in Alontae Taylor, Paulson Adebo, and Marshawn Lattimore. Now Lattimore's on a big contract already. You're looking at Adebo and Taylor still on rookie deals. Considering the way Isaac Yiadom is played, and he isn't the caliber of those other 3, but he's played well. Do you consider moving any of those 3 cornerbacks this offseason, just one of them, to try to get yourself more draft capital?
if I'm gonna move one, I'll be honest with you. I think I get the most value out of a Debo right now, and that's the guy I probably move for a high pick, and I'm talking second rounder.
Yeah.
You know, um, which is what you drafted him in.
Mm-hmm.
With the idea you're moving, you might move Taylor to the outside and put Yidam as a nickel. I think that's if I'm going to make a move like that, that's one person I'm thinking about. I mean, yeah, it sucks, but
Mm-hmm.
you don't have enough picks and you've got a lot of holes. And I think it's critical if you're going to make a move like that, you're making a move like that with a new coach who has a honeymoon period where people are going to accept that, okay, you're going to struggle for a while. And this is what I was saying about the quarterback position, too. I get it. Jalen Daniels plays at LSU, and that's a huge reason why everybody wants him because they missed out on Joe Burrow because we weren't picking number one overall. And I know they're sick of Carr, but I feel like the people who are sick of Carr, the anti Carr stuff is fueled by the fact that you got Jalen Daniels sitting out there.
Yeah.
And it's fueled by we want a new coach, we want a guy that's, who's going to get his own QB and all these things. Um, I get all that, but my thing is you can wait a year or two. You're going to have Carr regardless next year because of his contract
Mhm.
figure, and they're going to restructure his deal.
Mhm.
So I don't know how if they push it all until next year's cap, which is possible. I don't know, but they push it all. As far as his contract value as a signing bonus, and then break that all up over the next few years, you might be able to arrange something so you can let him go after 24, which is what the plan was,
Mhm.
and then you can start your new rookie quarterback and all that other stuff. But my attitude right now is you really, really, really need to upgrade those other positions just to be friggin' competitive right now.
Yeah.
Because you can't even field a competitive team next year. Uh, and I'll be honest with you, you're going to be the Panthers if you draft a quarterback next year and you don't have the picks to put talent around him. And I don't want to hear about, well, we're going to have Shaheed and Olave for him to throw to. He's still got Kamara to hand off to. The offensive line is crap.
Mhm.
Derek Carr has been knocked out of 3 games, okay, with 2 of them with a concussion, one with this one here with ribs and back. He's hurt his AC joint. You're going to see Jalen Daniels be a pinata back
Yeah.
there because he is going to be even less aware of what's going on around. His head is going to be swimming the whole time. What you see happening to Young over in Carolina, that's going to be 100-fold in New Orleans because the offensive line is going to get worse.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if Penning is a bust yet because I think Doug Marrone is a terrible offensive line coach.
Clearly.
Um, but I think Penning has some serious, serious red flags about him right now. Um, because if you look in the jumbo packages, when Andres Pete got hurt, who came in? It was Landon Young. Now Penning's active. He's not even inactive. He's active,
Yeah.
but he is not coming in on that field at all. At all. That's a huge red flag. Um, I don't I I don't know what's going to happen with him. I'd like to see a different offensive line coach get
Mhm.
his hands on him and let's see what happens with him. Can you do something with him because he's got the raw talent. I've
Yeah.
seen it. It's all in the mental part of the game. And I don't know. You need to find somebody who can unlock that. And I don't know if you're going to be able to. I really don't know. And that's a huge concern because with Penny being a bust, you have a domino effect down this offensive line. Um, you've got Hurst playing out there, and Hurst really shouldn't be out there anymore.
No.
He's at the end of his career, and he was a marginal player at best, career journeyman who can do some things, can fill in for a while when you need a veteran out there. But the longer he's out there, the more exposed he is. Okay.
Nick Easton. Nick Easton comes to mind. Similar
Yeah,
situation.
exactly, exactly. He's not a guy who can like a Ben Grubbs who is able to come in and step in, and he's not the caliber of the guy who replaced Carl Nix, but he can still function. He can still protect. Larry Warford was another one who got old all of a sudden, but Larry
Mhm.
Warford was another guy who could do that. You don't have that guy on this team right now. You don't have that kind of veteran guy who can come in and you're not going to get a big drop off between him and a starter. You're going to see a drop off with all the guys they have behind the quote unquote starters. Um, so yeah, I mean, So with Penny being a bust, now you have Pete playing left tackle. He is serviceable at left tackle, but he's probably better as a guard because
Mhm.
can be a guard and he's healthy as a guard. Um, and then that affects McCoy, and that's affecting the development of Ruiz. And you're seeing, I use the I use the Dorian Gray analogy on Twitter, and I'm sure that just went right over everybody's head. But he is the painting of Dorian Gray over there. As I watch Ramczyk out there blocking, he is getting older as I watch him.
Literally.
He is crumbling before me. So my hope is that as soon as you can salvage Penny, Penny moves to the left side and becomes a Kyle Turley on the on the right side. But you got to find that left tackle, and I don't know where that left tackle is because offensive line in general in the league is pathetic.
Hmm.
The play is pathetic. So you're not going to be able to go find one in free agency. You got to find it in the draft. And I don't know where that guy is. Because if you take a defensive end, an edge rusher in the first round, then you got a second round pick, which Denver's second round pick keeps falling.
Yeah.
Although they lost last week, it's probably going to end up being about where our second round pick would have been anyway.
Yep.
But your second round pick, now you're looking at an offensive lineman. You're going to have to go find. Your scouts are going to work overtime to find yourself a good left tackle in the second round. So
Hmm.
I mean, that's my biggest concern on these things. Is that how you kind of see it?
Sadly, yeah. Yeah. And you and I briefly touched on the quarterback conversation, last week or week before, in talking about assuming they make a head coaching change, that head coach is going to come in and he deserves to have his quarterback or his choice of quarterback, for the team that's taking over, that he's hitching his job security wagon to, but. It, if you can't stop the other team, if you can't stop the opposition from getting into your backfield, then it's not going to matter who your quarterback is back there. And this team just has so many holes. Bryce Young, the example you made with Bryce Young is one of hundreds of examples both of us could make. Dating around recent times or all the way back to the 80s and late 70s, of quarterbacks, including one in New Orleans in Archie Manning. Quarterbacks that had talent, individual talent and individual ability, but just due to the lack of support around them on both sides of the ball, either ended up getting shell shocked and beaten out of the league early, or just never was able to live up to potential. And that's one of the reasons why there are so many quarterback busts or early round quarterback busts. In the NFL is, a lot of these guys, some of these guys that come in, the Achilles Smiths, the Ryan Leafs, their physical ability coming into the league was overblown, and they just never had the mental ability for the game. But there are other guys like David Carr, another good example, of guys who look like they had the ability, to be at least a serviceable NFL quarterback, but you never got to see it because the team around them was so bad. That's the level we've reached in New Orleans. And again, safety, linebacker, interior and edge defensive line, and at the very least, one offensive tackle, if not two.
Yeah, yeah. And the problem you have right now is it's going to take 2 or 3 years to really turn this roster over and get younger.
Yeah.
We are at the 2014 level team right now. Build as a really good offensive team, but we're at 2014 level. We have to still go through 2015 and 2016 kind of seasons. And we don't have a Drew Brees to get us to 7 wins out of those years. We've got Derek Carr, who is probably going to get you to 5 wins, maybe 6. Well, we're 17 game season, um, so the good news, if you want to look at this way, is you're going to be able to play. You're going to play at a level that you're going to be able to pick in around 10, 11 each year. So that gives you your high picks that you want to get
Hmm.
to the second, to get those good players. Because I think what a lot of people imagine with by getting a Jalen Daniels, and I'm gonna keep bringing him up only because he's an LSU guy. But what they imagine with Jalen Daniels is, here's Michael Thomas making a great catch from this year, but they're imagining a CJ Stroud kind of situation where you get the right coach, you get him in there, and he becomes Superman, and now you're winning ball games, and the Texans have a good shot of winning the division because, as expected, the Jaguars are starting to kind of peter out,
Hmm.
and um, uh, Trevor Lawrence got hurt, so you don't know how that's going to play out. So yeah, I mean you, so people envision a quick turnaround, and that's actually be the worst thing that could happen to the Saints. To get that Jim Haslett 2000 or Sean Payton 2006 kind of instant success, because part of the reason why the Saints went down in 2007 and 2008 is they had a great draft class, but they needed some more.
Yeah.
The same with the 2000 Saints. 2000 Saints had an unbelievable draft class and free agency class. Um, 2009, 2001, you had the meltdown. They lost 4 straight and got outscored like 160-52.
Yeah.
And then 2002, yeah, 2000, yeah, that's why it was all the locker room drama. For those who don't remember that, that was somebody who was sleeping with Willie Roaf's wife, Joe Johnson, and not Joe Horn, Joe Johnson.
Hmm.
Um, Willie Roaf was injured, and then he found out his wife was screwing his teammates, and you had Albert Connell stealing money from Deuce McAllister. Ricky Williams hated him. He
Yep.
hated him so much that when he got traded to the Dolphins the next year, all he cared about was, let me know Deuce's stats each week because I want to make sure I have more yards rushing than Deuce McAllister, which I was like, great. I love it. I want you to hit 2,000, buddy, because we get a first round pick. You get over 1,500 yards rushing. We get Miami's first round pick. So go for it, dude. Go for it. I was the biggest Ricky Williams fan for the Dolphins in 2002. I loved it. But yeah, so you had so much drama in that locker room that it was splitting apart. Um, yeah, that which you don't have in this locker room, despite what fans imagine. It's but the 2001, 2002, 2003 Saints were never the same as the 2000 Saints.
Hmm.
Um, and it was he could never match that success, and people just got more and more angry at Hazlitt and Aaron Brooks because you weren't getting back to the playoffs. You weren't as successful as you were your first year. So right now, I kind of want to have, if a new coach comes in, have that struggle year, and then the next year you're starting to build a little bit more. You've lowered the bar to such an extent that people get satisfied because, oh look, but we're getting better. We're getting
Hmm.
better. It hasn't happened yet, but we're getting better. We don't feel like we're running on the treadmill of mediocrity between 7-10 and 10-7.
Right. And you bring up a great example with CJ Stroud and the success that he and the Houston Texans have had. And, you and I, me, and Brendan talked about the Texans in our draft show, and all three of us liked the way the Texans, the direction that Houston was building. You look at what they have other than C.J. Stroud, Damian Pierce, Devin Singletary, Tank Dell, Nico Collins, Laramie Tunsil, and two or three other first or second round draft choices on the offensive line. They traded up. They got Will Anderson. They have a couple young pieces. Two or three first and second round choices in their secondary. That's the big difference between the way the Houston Texans have built and the way the New Orleans Saints look right now. It's not that the Saints don't have those young players on their team. It's just that they haven't hit on those picks like it appears the Houston Texans have.
And to be fair, the Texans are picking in the top 10 the past 3
Yeah.
years.
Yes.
And the Saints are picking in the back half of the draft. Okay. So that's a huge difference.
Sure.
Okay. In 2017, part of the magic of that draft class was you had a first, two firsts, a second, a high second, and then you had what, 3 third-round picks because they traded up for Kamara.
Yeah.
So you had 6 players in the top 100 picks, with Trey Hendrickson being like pick 103. So it's just you pick a bunch of picks in the top half of the draft in a good deep draft, you're going to do extremely well. What do the Saints have this year? They got a first round, a second round, and then as of now, their next pick is not to the 5th round.
Mm-hmm.
So, now you're picking and you have like 2 5ths, 2 6ths, and a 7th. So your picks are all in the back half of the draft. That's hard to build a team. You can find some diamonds in the rough, but it's hard to build a team of consistent impact players with a bunch of picks on that back end of the draft. 2020, they only had 3 picks.
Mm-hmm.
2021, I think they had 4 or 5 picks. 2018, I think only one guy is left in the 2018 draft class. So I mean, that's why you're not doing well. That's why you now have gotten old. That's why you're missing pieces. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the offense, because believe it or not, there were a lot of good things to see in the offense.
Mm-hmm.
Taysom Hill was running his butt off. I tell you what, and I know it was, the Saints Saints offense in the red zone versus Detroit Lions off defense in the red zone, and both of them are the worst. And obviously the Saints got something out of that. But regardless, I saw a little bit more creativity. I saw a little bit more imagination, and just plain good execution by players in the red zone. Kamara ran extremely hard. Taysom Hill, of course, did his thing. I mean, Kamara got 2 touchdowns. We haven't even talked about that. He's now the all-time leading touchdown scorer on the ground.
Yep.
And he's going to be, I think he's just now hit, he's the 6th player in NFL history to have 1,000 yards rushing and receiving in a single season, 6 consecutive times, his first 7 years in the league or something like that. I saw some stat that I have to go back and look at it more carefully, but I was shocked that Roger Craig wasn't on that list. But he is on a list with LaDainian Tomlinson, Eric Dickerson, Marshall Faulk, a lot of Hall of Famers on this list. So, I mean, Alvin Kamara is definitely trying to put his body where his mouth is right now and do what he can to help this offense. And he is doing those things out there. So, yeah, congratulations, Alvin. You're now the Saints all-time leading touchdown on the ground. I think combined, you haven't hit the number that Marcus Colston has just receiving. You won't hit that number at 72. It's almost impossible to get to 72, but just receiving. But you will be, I think you're now the highest non-kicker all-time Saints scorer.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a tremendous accomplishment. and he's about to pass. I have to go back and look. I know he just passed George Rogers.
Hmm.
I think he is third now on the all-time rushing list. He's at
Yes.
5,500 yards rushing. So he has to get another 500 yards to catch up to Deuce,
Yes.
and then he can pass Mark Ingram on that. So I think he can do that in the next year, 2 years. He'll be the Saints' all-time leading rusher, which is just an amazing statistic. Um, given, and this is what it's going to be like for the rest of our time, I guess, on this planet. You're going to see more and more current Saints um, hitting those marks and passing franchise records, just because they are getting more talent. We're sitting there trashing all the lack of talent this team has, but they are getting better at drafting and getting better players. So when you have these down years, they are coming back faster. Um, the other person, Taysom Hill, has just surpassed Archie Manning
Yeah.
as the first non-quarterback or non-running back, I should say, non-running back to have the most rushing yards. It's a weird statistic, I know, but he is right behind Wayne
Wayne.
Wilson, Wayne Wilson, in the all-time rushing list. And I saw something. I think it was JT O'Sullivan who had the balls to post this on Twitter, that Taysom Hill apparently has pictures on people, and that's why he's still in the league. It's amazing. They still haven't figured out who Taysom Hill is and what he does for this team. I wrote back to him. I said, "Yeah, I know he's got pictures. I got pictures of truck and defenders. That's what he's got
Yeah.
pictures of.
Right.
That's why this dude is still in the league, man." Oh. But how do you feel about the offense? We beat up the offensive line enough, but how do you feel about the offense? The good things that the offense is doing.
Yeah, I'll tell you, and I concur with everything you said about Kamara and Taysom Hill. They've been playing their butts off, and kudos to Chris Olave too. He had a tough performance, against Detroit. Detroit knew that Olave was the only bona fide pass catcher in that receiving core, and Chris still put up over 100, and took a beating while doing it. And he had over 100 against Atlanta and taking a beating while doing that too. So for everybody that was criticizing, and we were two of them. For everybody that was criticizing Chris Olave's effort, through the middle part of the year, that light switch seems to be turning on for him. So I'm really happy to see that, because he's got all the ability in the world. We talk about the offensive line. And the offensive line continues they still can't get any consistent push in the running game. But I'll tell you, since we got past those first 4 or 5 weeks, this unit is starting to protect the passer really, really well. Derek Carr, they still have the guards, and McCoy still have problems with inside twists and stunts. But Ramczyk and Pete are doing a nice job, well beyond their skill level at this point in their careers. They're doing a serviceable job at pass protection along the outside. For you people that were saying, for you defenders of Derek Carr, and for that matter, Jameis Winston too, saying, well, these guys are making bad throws because they're not getting any pass protection. The last 5 or 6 weeks, that really hasn't been the case. The offensive line has shown me a lot of progression in that area. I still agree with you. They need at least 2 or 3 new linemen this offseason. Mm-hmm. But for the group that they have now, I think they're doing a pretty serviceable job in pass protection. And if they can get either Olave or Thomas back healthy, let alone both, and they're still in this race, their passing game could cause some teams trouble, now that, as you put it, now that they figured out creative ways to get Kamara on the edge as a runner. And, with Taysom running as hard as he is, this offense, I'm feeling a lot better about the offense in week 13 than I am the defense.
Yeah, I mean, you're going against Carolina, who struggles at every aspect of football, especially defensively.
Yeah.
You should be able to run the football for a change on this team. One of the biggest problems this team has had has been the lack of production in the running game outside of Taysom Hill and Alvin Kamara. Jamal Williams just has not been that power back, that guy you can rely on to go out there and make the tough yards. He's impressed me as a pass blocker because he's thrown his body in on a blitz, and he's been very intelligent picking up the blitz, but he has not been able to go out and just move the pile. Only Taysom Hill can move the pile to get those key first downs. And then Kendre Miller, it's been a medical redshirt year. He has never been able to stay healthy for an entire game, much less a couple games. And it's really disappointing because you see flashes of his ability. When he gets out in the open space, he really has a great second gear. He can break tackles. He's got soft hands. That screen pass he ran right before he got hurt was just magnificent. I mean, he got that sideline and boom, he was gone. It was 25 yards on a screen pass. But he can't stay healthy. And I see people out there talking about, we could have got Tajay Spears. We could have got somebody else, all this other stuff. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. As I tell people all the time, Spears probably blows his knee out in week 3, and he's on IR. And then we're all bitching about the fact that the Saints drafted a guy with bad knees. So, I mean, it's 2020 hindsight all day long. But anyway, that's the part of the offense that I'm really more disappointed in, is the inability to run the football to get the pressure off of Derek Carr. So it's not about Derek Carr having to make great throws all game long. I know he's got problems seeing the whole field. I think some of it is the pass rush and the hits he's taken over the season. And I think some of it is, honestly, his lack of having an entire offseason where he can sit there and do the workouts with the receivers to go out there and get the timing down and find out where I need to put this ball, where you're most comfortable at, and stuff like that. So, people are picking at him for everything right now, saying, okay, look, you're not hitting this dude in stride. You're not hitting this guy and then making him twist to go get these balls. You're not accurate with the throws. Oh, he's not Drew Brees. Well, that's where it gets to the point of that. And I know NFL quarterbacks should be able to make a lot of the throws that he is not accurate on, but it gets to the point where you're like, oh, he's not Drew Brees on every single pass. Because there are passes where he's putting it on the numbers. There are passes where he's putting it right where it needs to be. He's just not consistent doing it, and it's frustrating. I get it. But I think if we run the ball better, you take the ball out of his hands, and it makes his job easier. And we just have not been doing that. So, speaking of Carr, he's got a back and rib problem, as well as he's in concussion protocol. Do you play Jameis Winston this week as a starter, even if he clears concussion protocol?
Yeah, mainly because I can't see how he'd clear concussion protocol. Mainly because this is his second concussion in less than 3 weeks, and it's not like these are the first 2 concussions of a 32-year-old man's career either. Even if he does medically clear concussion protocol, whatever that entails, we don't know. I think still to be on the safe side, I do play Jameis Winston this week. So buckle up, Who Dat Nation, for the Jameis Winston experience. Because you're going to get it, whether Jameis is in on 5 snaps or 50 snaps. There is always the Jameis Winston experience. But as Jordy Hallberg and I were talking about this afternoon, at this point, and I don't care whether you're still a Carr supporter or whether you just detest everything that has to do with what Derek Carr has ever touched. At this point, you're talking about a human being, a father, a husband. Medical health, medical safety, and long-term health take precedence over a football game at this point. And Jameis Winston, whether you love Winston or hate him, if you're the Saints, you kept Winston on the roster for exactly this kind of situation. So if you force a wounded Derek Carr out there in lieu of playing Jameis Winston, then you have truly done Jameis zero favors at all. In fact, it's almost insulting to him at this point. And I get that it's a business and you're in the business to win games, but also, for the almighty, Goodell player safety. Again, I don't think you can play Derek Carr. I don't. I think you got to go with Jameis Winston this weekend.
I feel the same way. And I'm not a big Jameis Winston supporter. I don't despise him, but I'm not a supporter because he reminds me of Charlie Sheen's character in Major League.
Yes.
You should play Wild Thing when he throws the ball because you don't know where that ball is going to go. He's going to complete that pass. Now, whether or not he completes it to your team or his own team, there's a 50-50 shot every time that ball goes up in the air.
Yeah.
But I do agree he needs to play this week because Carr has had back-to-back concussions. Well, not quite back-to-back, but close enough.
Close, yeah.
Yeah. He doesn't have that bye week to get over this other one. And you've been knocked out of 3 games. You may have bruised ribs. I don't know. But, yeah, this is the game that you need to sit him for and just let him heal. I know you're trying to win the NFC South. There's a possibility you can win the NFC South still because this division is so bad.
Yeah.
And the teams in it are so bad. The Falcons almost lost to the freaking Jets. I mean, if the Jets weren't so incompetent, they lose if they deal with somebody who just has a quarterback, they would have lost that game. But so the division is still in your reach. And I get it. You feel like Derek Carr is the best way you can win that division. But the best thing you can do right now is, like you said, play Jameis, put a lot of Taysom Hill in there.
Oh, yeah.
But you got to play Jameis and just try. And this is a bad team. You should beat this team. As long as you don't give them hope, you should beat this team and really beat them pretty soundly.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's just this is the week to play Jameis.
Yeah.
And
by the way, don't even mess around. I mean, you can play cat and mouse with the media and injury reports all you want, but don't mess around with your team. You needed to go in there Monday morning to your team and to these quarterbacks and say, Jameis is going to be our starter this week. We're going to have a heavy Taysom package, and our game plan is going to be geared around what Jameis and Taysom do well. Not this is Derek Carr's system, but Jameis is going to be taking first team reps. You don't even mess around with that. Monday morning, you come in and install that game plan for Jameis and Taysom.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, for those of you who are saying, what about Jake Haener? What about Jake Haener? Listen, you put Haener out there, you're going to Ian book him.
Yes.
That's what you're going to do to him. The man was suspended for 6 weeks. He had 0 contact with the team for 6 weeks. He's had next to no practice time because it's the regular season now. That kid needs some work before he is even close to being NFL ready. Yep. All you're going to do by putting him out there now, and I don't care if the season's over with, all you're going to do by putting him out there is have everyone sit there and go, well, he's no good. because you're not giving him a fair shot. You know, it's like taking a brand new driver, and I get it, he's played quarterback in college and high school, but taking a driver with limited experience and saying, you know what, here are the keys to the Ferrari, go hit the Autobahn.
Uh-huh.
Not a good idea. Not a good idea. You just leave Hayner where he is.
Yep.
He's another one, needs at least an off season worth of work and preseason. Hell, he needs developmental league, and that's the thing I've always been upset about since NFL Europe went away. I thought NFL Europe was one of the best things for those kind of players, is put them in a developmental league. That's how Jake Delhomme made it in the NFL. It's how Kurt Warner made it. It's how Leroy Glover made it. All these guys that are marginal players, you put them in a developmental league and they're getting the experience they need. And I really miss that developmental football league. And I get it, you risk injury and all those other things like that. I know, but it's good for coaches too.
Mm-hmm.
Getting these assistant coaches, we're all talking about Ronald Curry should be the offensive coordinator. And I said, well, I don't know if Ronald Curry can call plays in the NFL level. If he's coaching the Barcelona Dragons or the Rhine Fire, and I'm just calling these teams out from, back in the late 90s, early 2000s. But, if he's coaching one of those teams, the London Monarchs, as the offensive coordinator, he's calling the plays. He's learning how to do it in the NFL, and he is calling plays with NFL players. That's how you get good coordinators coming up out of the league too, to get new coaches. You want more African-American coaches in the league? You need a developmental league to get their feet wet, so owners will look at these guys and go, you know what? Ronald Curry was the head coach of the London Monarchs. They went 6-0 in that league. He did a damn good job. I like him a lot. I'm looking at him. Maybe he's one of my assistant coaches. I'm looking at him as somebody I might be grooming to be a head coach one day. That's how you do it. Yep. And I really, for the life of me, I don't understand why the owners don't want it. Well, I do know why, because, the money. But, you've got the NFL Network. You can do this thing. You can put together a spring football league in Europe and grow the European market and develop players at the same time. These players need it.
Why can't you work out a deal with the USFL or XFL? Well, I guess the two leagues have merged now, but USFL or XFL. XFL has tried, 3-4 times now to try to make this work. It's real easy to pick up the phone and work out a deal with the NFL, because if it's money in Roger Goodell's personal pocket, and let's face facts, that's what it is, then they would figure it out a way, because a guy like Jake Hayner or Ian Book before that, or JT Barrett before that, you could really see if these guys could, it could be something. Because a lot of people have asked me, and I had a conversation as recently as this afternoon. Hey, why wouldn't you play Jake Hayner? See if you have another Brock Purdy. I get it. And I liked Jake when they picked him up. I loved his film at Fresno State. But here, there's 3 huge differences between Jake Hayner and Brock Purdy. Number one, Brock Purdy had the San Francisco 49ers roster around him. This ain't no San Francisco 49ers roster. That's problem A. Problem B, Purdy only played because of a literal medical emergency. Your first 3 quarterbacks. I mean, everybody knew Trey Lance, Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt, but the guy they had on the practice squad, he got hurt too in preseason. That's what elevated Purdy to a position in the first place. Otherwise, Purdy still wouldn't have seen the field. And number 3, the differences between the two. And I point this out to a lot of people that you just mentioned it, but a lot of people forget. Jake Hayner missing 6 weeks of time due to his own screw up and getting suspended. That right there automatically meant red shirt year, no matter what else happened. It was unlikely he was ever going to see the field anyway. that clinched it right there, because there is zero chance he is anywhere close to being ready.
My niece just chimed in. Hey, Genevieve, happy birthday. So 15th
Oh, happy
birthday
birthday.
today. So tell your papa if you got your card or not. So my dad. Tell your papa if you got your card from him, because he wants to know. But happy birthday, Genevieve. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, when we start talking about these kind of things, and I think Trevor Penning right now is another good candidate for a developmental league, because you want to see what you got. I just feel like developmental leagues really help players and help keep players, especially in we're playing now in a league where the salary cap concentrates all the money in a very small group of players, mostly led by a quarterback, but a very small group of players. So you're filling out the rest of your roster with rookie contracts, undrafted free agent contracts, and so forth. And one of the reasons why the quality of football that you're seeing across the league is so bad right now is because you're taking these guys who they have the raw talent but not refined enough, and you're putting them out there as starters. And you're putting them out there and making them go out there and play these games, and then making these mistakes. So that I'm just I've always loved the NFL Europe. Just some kind of D League football league, and I know why the owners don't do it, because that's money that they got to spend. That's more players they got to worry about, and they don't like spending money on the players.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's especially with all the streaming services now. There's so many ways you could do things and get these guys involved, but that's a whole nother topic. Um, okay, so last thing, Saints Panthers. How do you see this game playing out?
Before we went on our separate rants about developmental leagues and Jay Kaner, Trevor Penning, you mentioned something that that has been sticking in my mind, gnawing in my mind. Is that the Panthers have played some teams closely. They are an awful football team, and just all in all kinds of disarray right now. But they're still keeping the scores of a lot of these games close. And the Panthers Saints series in general is pretty close to dead even. There's only one game separating them, one or two games, and this is just the this is the type of game that I can actually see the Saints losing very, very easily. I agree with what you said; they should win this game handily, but there's a lot of shoulds that should have happened this year that hasn't. And the way the Saints have come out in the first quarter and first half of the last 7 or 8 weeks now, you let that Panthers team hang around, and they still have some talented defensive pieces that can make enough plays against you in the second half if they get a lead. That I could see the score 19-17 keeps jumping around in my head, like the Panthers 19, Saints 17 kind of thing. And I'll tell you, if that happens, I don't care how much Mickey Loomis and Gail Benson love Dennis Allen. There is zero chance you're going to be able to keep that mob away from storming the gates of your palace at that point. So you people that want Dennis Allen fired, you might very well get it. And I know I'm with you. I still don't think it happens during the season, but they lose to the Panthers at home with the track record already under Dennis Allen, the overall record, the divisional record, the home record. I think that might be enough to push him out the door. I'm not necessarily predicting a Saints loss yet because it's only Tuesday. But I tell you, the way the way the New Orleans Saints have played this year, I don't see how anybody could have any faith in them against any team. That's just the way I feel right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when we started this a couple weeks ago, during the bye, I said, well, okay, I can see them winning at Atlanta, losing to Detroit, winning at Carolina. I mean, winning against Carolina, winning against the Giants, losing to the Rams, and winning against the Bucs and the Falcons to win the division. But I don't feel like that anymore. I really don't, because of what we started the show with the defense struggling, and because you know they just can't. I equated it to I equated it to a you've got a dike, okay, and little boy blue poking his finger to put a hole to cover the hole in the
Yeah,
dike.
dike in a dam, you perverts.
Yeah. So you plug one hole and another one springs out. So you reach over and plug that hole, then another one springs out. You're running out of fingers now. You're running out of places to fill the holes, and meanwhile it's cracking everywhere.
Uh-huh.
And it's only a matter of time before the water pushes the whole thing and takes you with it. And I feel like that's where the Saints are right now, because it's not like, okay, it's just Derek Carr, he's the problem, or it's just Pete Carmichael's play calls. That's the problem. It's everywhere. It's different people screwing up, different people doing things. The game last week, who were the biggest problems on the team? Juwan Johnson, who was supposed to have this great breakout season. He was terrible. Jimmy Graham looked better. Jimmy Graham was only in 2 plays.
Yeah.
Which that's a whole nother subject, sore subject with me right now. Why'd you bring him in and you're not even using him in the red zone or in third down like you said you would? I get it, you're running the ball in red zone, but still use him. But yeah, the defensive line now, the linebackers, the secondary, it's every time you turn around, there's another problem. So that's why it feels like there's so much you need to do to turn this team around. I still think they win this game, which is going to make people mad, but I don't feel very confident about the rest of the games in the schedule. I think they have a good chance of only sweeping Carolina and getting swept by the Falcons and the Bucs
Yeah.
to pretty much end their season. And I don't know. But this is the only week I feel like this is the week they could possibly win something. We'll see if Michael Thomas comes back for the second and last game of the season. We'll see if Rashid Shaheed comes back next couple of weeks. He's got a quad injury. They didn't put him on IR. Does Marshawn Lattimore come back? I don't know. So I think Lattimore is going to depend on whether or not this final game of the season is for the division and if they go to the playoffs. So, and that could be the same true for Michael Thomas. Anyway, what do you have going on in Bayou Blitz tomorrow? Or are you having a show tomorrow?
We moved it to Thursday. Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. You guys' time, Central Time. And I'm glad when we have to move the shows to Thursday for whatever reason, because by Thursday you have a better feel for the injury report. In the last couple of weeks, that's been especially key. This week in particular, you're talking about Rashid Shaheed. I don't think Shaheed plays because when you're dealing with a quad or a hamstring injury on a speed guy, it's usually 2 weeks before they're ready, minimum. Obviously the Derek Carr, Jameis Winston, situation, who plays, who's ready, who's not. Cam Jordan, Pete Werner, Marcus May, any or all of those guys, how are they faring? So we'll have a better idea on Thursday. We'll also be able to talk a little bit more, or we will talk a little bit more about potential scenarios if they do beat Carolina. Because you and I always hate this scenario. The Saints have dug their hole to the point where they not only need a winning streak themselves, something that's only happened twice under Dennis Allen, but they've dug themselves a hole where they not only need a winning streak themselves, but they need the dreaded and need some help scenario. even if you split with Atlanta, even if you split with Tampa Bay. I don't know the Buccaneers division or in conference record, but I know the Falcons are undefeated in the division right now. So, you're not only behind a game behind them in the standings and head to head, but even if you split that head to head series, you now need the Falcons to lose at least one more game,
Mhm.
because you're going to lose out on the tiebreaker. So for the third consecutive year, the squad has now dug their own grave, and now needs a lifeline from numerous other teams to help them out. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that scenario. Let's play the what if game. What if the Saints lose to Carolina? What if the Saints beat Carolina but lose to the Giants? What's going to happen? What should realistically happen? So we're going to talk about we're going to play the always fun what if scenarios on Thursday too.
Yeah. Um, I just have this feeling it's like Dick going 6-10 back to back years. I think the Saints probably at this point, if I'm a betting man, I'm betting on 7-10, um, which is 2 wins out of the next
Mm-hmm.
6 games. So yeah, 6 games. So it's
Mm-hmm.
just it's I don't know if they can. I don't know if that's going to be to get out of this. If they're going to keep Dennis Allen for one more year with a 7-10 record, um, that'd be a tough sell,
Uh-huh.
especially if if your 2 wins come against, say, the Panthers and the Giants, you know, and you went 2-4 in the division, that you're showing you're a slide backwards. And I just feel like the mood in the city and the mood with the fans to run it back one more time to turn this around, just it's not there. It's
No.
not there.
Well, and
So
the numbers don't support it. As Saints fans, as Saint media, and you and I are guilty of it too. We always talk about we always use the verbiage like, yeah, the Saints are bad, but they still have a chance because they're in such a bad division. And while that's true, Dennis Allen against that bad division, Dennis Allen teams are 3-6 against the NFC South.
mhm,
All the other numbers are bad, but
mhm.
when you're 3-6 against a universally recognized worst division in football, that should be enough to get you to the unemployment line.
Yeah, especially exactly, because you draft to beat the teams in your division. That's the first thing you're drafting to do. You want to be able to beat the teams that you're playing. You have to play twice a year, and if you're not doing that, then that's the sign it's time to go. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of things that are in place still. And I know people are like mad saying Mickey Loomis is gaslighting us because he's not trashing Allen, but that's who
What
Mickey
do you
Loomis is.
expect him to say?
Right. But what they want to hear him say is what they say on social media. Yeah, you shit, we're gonna get rid of him. They're not gonna say that.
Right.
That he is not going to say that. I mean, the only thing he hasn't said yet, which would be for me, the guarantee he's getting fired is, he has a. Damn it. Once you say you have the full support of ownership, that's the kiss of death.
Yes.
That's the kiss of death. That is Michael kissing Fredo in Cuba. That's what it's going to be. So, yeah, you need to, Anna. You need to. Anyway, we'll find out next week. I'm predicting a win. Bob, do you predict a win? Okay,
No.
so we'll see if we're right. No, you're not. You're not predicting. You're going to
No.
stick with your 19-17.
I,
Okay.
I am. Yeah. I mean, I reserve the right to change it before Sunday's pregame show. But right now, I'm going Panthers 19, Saints 17.
Yeah. Well, right now I'm going Saints win, even with Jameis Winston starting, just because I'm thinking of 3 quarters of nonsense, and then all of a sudden in fourth quarter he'll get into that emergency fire drill and start hitting people left and right with passes that come from God, and next thing you know, the Saints pull out a win, and everyone's praising it, forgetting the past 3 quarters. So I think if that's the case, that's what we're going to see. So who knows? Anyway, thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, Bob, for staying up late going through all this. As always, I appreciate you doing this. Stay warm. Everybody, try and be optimistic. Try at least get gallows humor about this. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, the constant negativity just makes the season that much worse. And we all look forward to football season. You know, tell good jokes like, New Orleans crime is so bad. I left 2 tickets on my dash. Somebody broke into my car. I left 2 more. I mean, that's good jokes.
Hmm.
Not God. I hate dinner salad. That gets old. So anyway, thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next time under the dome. Good night, everybody.
Good night.